Hey, what's up? Hello everyone, it's Marisa here. It's been a minute, but I'm going back to my roots today and talking to you about something I have loved ever since I was a child, and that is reading. I thought this was a good time to put something like this out here because I've done this before of like summer reading recommendations, some books that I've read that I would recommend you read this summer. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about books. And we've got a decent amount to cover here. I've got some low-key fiction, romance type of novels, something more casual, and then also some ones that may make you think a little bit more. Something I've been using lately that I don't think I've ever really taken advantage of before is the app Goodreads. So this obviously been around for ages, but I recently got into it because some of my friends are on it and we all have different reading challenges, and it's fun to see how people are doing. So this is mine right now. Feel free to follow me. But I am one book ahead of schedule. I'm trying to read 18 books this year because I read 12 last year. I'll have the timestamps at the bottom of the different books or authors I'm discussing so you can hop around to what is interesting to you, but I will just get into it. I think I'm going to start with the more lighthearted, fun stuff because that's what I like to read in the summer, some good escapism. And two of those I have here are both Emily Henry books. So I just discovered Emily Henry this year. Beach Read was the first book that I read, and then I read Book Lovers, and then I most recently read People We Meet on Vacation. They're pretty decently sized, but they're still very easy to read. I feel like they're like just enough description to where I'm really enjoying it and envisioning it in my head, but not enough where it's like too much. The storylines I think are really unique compared to what else is out there. Book Lovers especially I thought was just like so creative. And then the characters are like flawed, but you like love them anyway. I especially thought that about People We Meet on Vacation, the way I wanted to like shake Poppy. But yeah, I just love them. This one is more of a friends to lovers, which is what I really enjoyed because I feel like it's something I relate to. And then Beach Read is kind of, I don't know if I would say enemies to lovers, but indifferent to lovers. And probably the same with Book Lovers. But anyway, I really recommend Emily Henry if you want to kind of get back into reading, especially if you're like based in the Midwest, because I feel like she makes a lot of like Midwest references. She references Indiana University in People We Meet on Vacation, which I thought was fun because that's where I went to school. The next author I want to highlight is Elin Hilderbrand. I actually had the lovely opportunity to meet her last summer with my mom. I'll insert a picture. Such an amazing moment. She signed some books for us. Yeah, I've read quite a few of her books. The most recent one, or the only one that I've read this year, is The Hotel Nantucket, which wasn't my favorite book by her, but pretty interesting. It reminded me of her book Golden Girl because it had like more unique perspectives. Like, you probably won't like this book if you don't believe in like ghosts because there's like a ghost perspective, but I thought it was really fun, and I like how she like, I don't know, took the risk, I guess, to like try something new like that. And I think it ended up working really well, and I just love her writing style. Again, I just feel like I'm there. I feel like I'm on Nantucket Island. Definitely helps that I have actually been there before, but I definitely recommend her too if you want to get back into reading. Okay, the next author slash book, Taylor Jenkins Reid. She is slaying right now. She's really getting her check. They made Daisy Jones and the Six, which I absolutely loved. I'm trying to remember what streaming service is on. Is it on Hulu? Oh, I think it's on Prime Video. Loved that show. I watched it by myself, and then I watched it with my mom and my sister, and I would watch it again. Absolutely loved it. I read that book last year. And then The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is also becoming a movie adaptation, so that will be interesting to see. The book that I read this year was called One True Loves, which is also gonna be a movie adaptation. Didn't love this book. I gave it like a 3 out of 5, I think, because I thought like it was like a little cheesy and unrealistic, but I don't regret my time with it, and I'm excied to read more Taylor Jenkins Reid book. I think Malibu Rising is next on my list. The next light beach read that I read was called The Unhoneymooners, and this was by Christina Lauren. This book was super fun. I read it so quickly. Again, it probably falls into the more like a little bit unrealistic and cheesy type of a world. Sometimes that's what you need. Would love more recommendations to similar types of books if you have them. Leave them in the comments. Okay, and then the last like romance type of book that I read was a Nicholas Sparks book, which I haven't read a Nicholas Sparks book in a long time, but I got this from a TikTok recommendation, and it was called The Wish. I thought this book was so good. It took me a while to get into it. I almost gave up on it from like the first part of it, but it really then grabbed my interest probably like a third of the way, and I like had to read all of it. Yeah, very Nicholas Sparksy. Reminded me a lot of The Notebook because it's like the different perspectives of her when she's older versus thinking back to like a part of her life when she was like younger and a teenager. So I personally like that. I think it's like fun, the duality, the reflection, all of that, the romance, the drama, maybe death. But yeah, you'll have to read it to find out. Yeah, it had me bawling my eyes out, but I signed up for that when I decided to read a Nicholas Sparks book, so it might be a while till I read another one by him. Alrighty, and those are just all my fun light reads. Now I want to talk about some, I don't know how to categorize these, but I guess like more non-fiction-y. So the first one I have here, I have a physical version of it. It's All About Love by Bell Hooks. So I actually wrote a lot of notes in this, annotating it kind of along the way because I read it for book club. But yeah, this is the first Bell Hooks book I read, and I felt like it was really hard for me. Like I had to like push through to read all the chapters, and there's only 12 of them. She had some good takes, she had some not as good takes from my perspective, but I think it's one of those books where you just kind of have to like read it, take what applies to you, and go. Like if you analyze it to death, it's like not enjoyable. Like some of it I just wasn't really getting or clicking with. I wonder if that would be the case for me for another book by her. I know she has a ton of good ones. The topic of love I think is super important to reflect on in all different types of relationships, so I am glad I read it. The next book that I read was How to Stand Up to a Dictator, and this was kind of a memoir by Ressa, who is actually a Filipino journalist. And it's not too big of a book, but it did take me a while to read it, like multiple months. It is a little bit like mind-blowing in the way that like the intro made me like really freaked out about the state of the world, because it's a lot about basically like fake news, like how people are consuming media, how social media platforms are shaping people's perception of things, and all of that jazz, which is kind of heavy, but very interesting and important to read, especially for me, I think, because I work in marketing, digital marketing, and you know, we're a part of that, paying these companies to put our ads out there. So I think it's important to try to like read and be educated on different stuff like this. She's super impressive. Her story is incredible. She won a Nobel Peace Prize, so that's, you know, a good tell. It kind of reminded me of the book Educated, which is also a memoir. I love that book, and also kind of reminded me of Just Mercy, which is by Brian Stevenson, I think. I read this because my uncle got it for me for a birthday gift, actually, because we talked about it during Christmas time. I feel like it's a book that should be read like in school and like have discussions about it. And I know I did say it's a little doomsday, but there is like a very optimistic ending where there's like, this is what we can do to make the world better and like not keep these horrible things going on. And then the other book that I wanted to put in this category, because it's also kind of a memoir from my perspective, was Untamed by Glenn Doyle. I read this book based off of a recommendation that I saw someone post on Instagram saying that was like one of their favorite books last year, and I really liked it. Her writing style is definitely not for everybody, but for me, as someone who has like a TikTok brain, like I know everybody jokes about TikTok writing their brain. In her book, they're like very small chapters, very like easy to digest little stories and nuggets about her life. And she like was married to a man, and then now she is married to a woman. It made me think a lot about like parenting, because I feel like a lot of her lessons kind of centered around that, but also just being like a woman in America, and like, you know, what we're conditioned to think that we want versus like living a life that we actually love and find joy from. So yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. I liked it personally, and would recommend it. Yeah, that was my last book, which totals up to 10 out of 18. Yeah, these are what I recommend for your summer reading list. And as a bonus, I think I'm going to shout out 3 other books that I read last year, because why not? So I'm going to shout out The Ballads of the Songbirds and Snakes, which is the Hunger Games prequel. You guys better be reading that before the movie comes out, I think in November. Another one that I read last year that I loved was All the Light That We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr, or Doerr, I'm not sure how to say his last name. But this was so beautifully written. It's a historical fiction novel set in World War II. It's 2 different perspectives, and it's quite heartbreaking at the end, and throughout it, but at the end especially. I really like historical fiction, and I just realized, read any historical fiction this year, so I'm gonna have to add one of those to my list. And then the last one I'm gonna shout out was something I just finished in December, but it's one of those books where like you read it and you like randomly think of it sometimes because of like how crazy it was, and it was The Secret History by Donna Tartt. A thick book, took a long time for me to get into it, but by the end my mind was blown. I was like rethinking humanity, but like just because it was like such an engaging story. It's basically about this like group of like college friends who will go to like a really teeny tiny school, I think in like Vermont. I won't tell you everything that happens, but yeah, I thought that one was a really interesting book, and I personally don't know anybody who's read it. I've been trying to get people to read it, and it's like a lot to commit to. I don't have anybody to discuss it with, so alrighty, thank you so much for listening to my rambling. I love a good sit down, I love reading, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!